A choice between a better future and a bleak past. Vice President and presidential candidates for the NPP, Dr. Bawumia, has drawn the battle lines, as he's delivered his party's 2024 manifesto. And he describes it as one of hope that will usher the nation into a golden age of good governance and accountability. He says the next NPP government will tackle head-on cost of living, youth unemployment, private sector empowerment, and roads, among others. And this morning, we want to probe highlights in the manifesto. And we will discuss this with our panel. We have Charles Kusi-Appiah-Kubi. He's head of Business and Economic Bureau and Executive Secretary of Ashanti Business Owners Association. We also have Professor Lord Mensah, economist and lecturer, UGBS, and of course, Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, a CDD fellow. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this conversation. Right, we have Dr. John Osai-Kwapong with me right now. And Doc, I want to come to you and ask this question to set the ball rolling. After listening to Dr. Bawumia, which, the speech ended around 8:30 thereabouts, what was your impression of the entire manifesto launch event and what he promises to do if given the mandate come December 2024?
Good morning again. Good morning to everyone else. It's, he's making the case for a Bawumia presidency and rolls out a number of policies and programs across the various sectors of the economy that he believes, if implemented, would, address all the various challenges that Ghana faces, or the people of Ghana are saying, and their feeling about different issues. As usual, it was very well attended event. Got the party really excited about the 2024 election, and as is typical of the political party manifestos that we have seen over the course of the Fourth Republic, does cover quite a lot of ground and promises to do a lot of things in several areas of the economy. So those are my initial impressions.
I do want us to take a listen to some of the things he said, and then we can get surgical with it. But I want to ask, though, he described it as a manifesto of hope. How hopeful did you find his promises?
If you go through and look at some of the key ideas, for example, around issues of job creation and unemployment. Yes, there's the question of with political manifestos, there's always the question of the extent to which all of it can be done within a given time frame, and how it's going to be done and all of that. But at least in the ideas being put out, right? That when you sit back as a Ghanaian or as a voter, your initial feeling should be, well, if all of these things can be done within a certain time frame, then it should be able to address some of our key challenges that we face.
All right, so let's take a listen to what Dr. Bawumia has been saying or is proposing, especially on in terms of corruption. Take a listen.
ECD is designed to work The ECD is designed to work online and offline and will be launched by the Bank of Ghana in due course. The ECD will be the ultimate weapon in our fight against corruption because it will provide transparency, reduce the risk of fraud, robbery, tax avoidance, and money laundering, since it will be easy to track the movement of money and identify suspicious activity. The ECD will quicken the pace of Ghana's move towards a cashless or a near cashless society. We will also, ladies and gentlemen, implement blockchain technology and smart contracts for secure data exchange and transparent government services. Employing a distributed ledger technology improves transparency and efficiency. This will make all government transactions permanently traceable and not subject to alteration. I want Ghana to be the first country in Africa and one of the few in the whole world to become an all-government blockchain government.
Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, what do you make of these assertions and submissions, promises from DMB, Dr. Mamudu Bawumia, on how he intends to use ECD to tackle corruption?
So I'm not very familiar with how these digital currencies work. I have a basic idea, right? It's supposed to be an alternative to be able to doing cash transactions. You store it in digital wallets. It reduces the use of the fiscal cash in various transactions. So that's the basic idea, that I get. But I think for us, at least if you look at, for example, the Auditor General's report and the issues that are raised in the Auditor General's report, and a lot of the infractions that occur in the management of public finance, I don't get the impression that a lot of those infractions are an issue of digital currency. I mean, I can see how it can help if the use of fiscal cash facilitates the engagement in corrupt activities. And therefore, when you're using an ECD, you are better able to track who is doing what illegally or improperly with currency. But for me, the corruption challenge is more than just a digital currency issue. Yes, that can help, but the corruption challenge goes beyond how you solve it with a digital currency. The infractions that you see, as pointed out by the Auditor General, some of the procurement breaches that you see, for me, will take more than just a digital currency to be able to address that. And
he actually did mention that he intends to restructure procurement processes, in his bid to fight corruption. How feasible is that particular promise? You said that it goes beyond ECD, it goes beyond the currency, and so of course there's a lot to be done in the fight against corruption. And then there's Office of the Special Prosecutor and their challenges and achievements so far. But how feasible is it to restructure procurement processes in our bid to tackle corruption?
It should be. So, for example, if he takes a look at the Public Procurement Act and is able to identify still some of the loopholes or some of the flaws that makes public procurement still challenging, it should be very feasible to restructure, to work with Parliament, restructure the legislation, strengthen some of the processes involved, by law. But again, there's always the implementation challenge, because once you are able to restructure it by virtue of the law, then it also is up to the agency to implement it. And it's sometimes in the implementation of the rules and the processes that gets us into the difficulties that we run into. So hopefully the restructuring will also include, should I say, penalties or punishments at the agency level, should those at the procurement agency fail to live by whatever restructured processes, policies that are put in place. But that can be done. We can always, it's quote unquote, it's easy to restructure and tweak how we go about procurement.
And then there's the bit about leasing vehicles, rather than buying them. What did you make of that as well?
So, he shared this idea when he gave his major policy speech earlier on during the year. The rationale behind it is that it helps reduce the cost of government in terms of buying the vehicles and all of that. So again, for me, if you can, if I can structure in such a way that it actually reduces the cost, then it wouldn't be a bad idea. One of the things, again, you want to guard against in the leasing processes, the procurement challenge that we talk about, that lease corruption is, how do you make it open, transparent in such a way that whoever is contracted by the government to lease it, that it is done in a very open and transparent way. But if that would reduce the cost of government, which was the rationale he provided months ago when he gave his first major policy speech, again,
right.
Why not?
I do want us to take a listen to another soundbite, but before we get on that, that's more specific. Let me ask, overall, can we see or say that Dr. Bawumia has articulated a consistent and clear message for victory in 2024? What did you take out as that unique selling proposition for Dr. Bawumia for December 2024?
So if you go back to, if I use his major policy speech earlier on during the year, as the context for answering this, then yes, he keeps highlighting the same themes and the same issues. For example, if you look at his suggestions around the economy, issues of taxation, all of that, you see that he has constantly, talked about the same things in terms of what he plans to do around taxation, what he plans to do around job creation. So for that message, he's kept very, very consistent with that. The question then becomes, to what extent will the voters, trust and believe that these things can be done? Because at the end of the day, all the great ideas and all the things that are proposed in these political manifestos, in my opinion, will boil down to which of the candidates does the Ghanaian voter trust will be able to deliver. And deliver in terms of not every single thing in the manifesto, but at least would be able to tackle a lot of the things in the manifesto to address whatever challenges that the Ghanaian folks are facing. But at least he's framed his message as one of possibility, as one of looking forward, and he continues to sort of hammer on that theme over and over again, which you end up seeing in the manifesto.
Right. Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, please hold for me. Let me bring in the Executive Secretary of Ashanti Business Owners Association, and he's also the Head of Business and Economic Bureau at GUTA, Mr. Charles Kusi Appiah-Kubi. Mr. Charles Kusi Appiah-Kubi, yesterday, the country was told that Bawumia is for business, and he's gone on to elaborate on what he intends to do, his ambition, aims, and promises for the country given the mandate. What is your assessment of his promises in terms of his vision for business, and what are your reservations?
Much, and good morning to you, to your viewers, and to the country. Yes, yesterday we had the privilege to listen to the Vice President, who is also running as the presidential candidate for NPP. And I must say, I was so much impressed with the promises that he outlined for businesses and for the rebound of the economy. And I might say we've had the opportunity of meeting with him and his team during some of his tours, and we made some of the challenges and the reforms that we are looking for as businesses. And his manifesto speaks to the issues that we raised with him and the recommendation that we gave. So I would say the manifesto that His Excellency outlaid yesterday was exactly what businesses was asking for, and we are most grateful to him, and we are impressed with the delivery. Okay, so we're looking at the
was the highlight for you that you're celebrating or you're grateful for this morning? What in the manifesto for, or what in his promises for businesses are you happy about?
One of the things that we're so much happy was about the amnesty that he wants to
Mr. Charles,
like the tax amnesty. Can you hear me?
I think we are having some connection challenges with Mr.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you please hear me?
Mr. Kusi, please go on.
Okay. So one of the key things that we're so much happy about was the tax amnesty that was given to businesses. Over the period, we raised concern about the tax net of this country and the burden that we place on registered tax agents. So today, if we are going to give businesses tax amnesty, it also means that it's going to open the floodgate for every business to come on board and pay taxes. That will reduce the tax burden that has been on that the few identified businesses in the country. Two, we're looking at flat tax rates. The current VAT system brings a lot of disparity, which defiles the basic principle of taxation, that is fairness and equity. So within the market, you have people on flat rate 4%. We have those on standard rate effective rate of 21%. Selling the same commodities do not create that self-compliance. So a lot of people are not paying taxes, they are avoiding taxes, they are evading taxes because of the structure and the non-compelling compliance of the current taxes. So if it's going to harmonize the tax system to ensure flat rates, it's a good news for us. So self-compliance, which is one of the principles of taxation, that tax must resonate to the issues of business so that business will find it much more easier to pay taxes. So he also talks about how he's going to benchmark charges at the port that of Lomé. You remember in 2017 or so, the Vice President talked about transactions between Tema and that of Lomé. And it's an assessment, transactions of the Lomé by container volumes was about 200% within a certain quarter. Again, we're doing about 4%. So they introduced the benchmark value to ensure that we increase trade transactions at the port, which of course helped the government to rake in some revenue. And it's also reduced the cost of importing at the port, which of course has a positive effect on prices in the market. So if in his manifesto he's going to align our import taxes or charges to that of Lomé, that's a good news. That's going to be a relief to us as businesses. He also talks about the SME bank. You see, the current status quo made it difficult for most of about 80% of SME to access facilities from the commercial banks because of the rudiment and some of the documentation you have to go through before you get credit. Introducing an SME obviously will mean that it's going to speak to the challenges of credit assessment in this country. That will mean that SMEs will have easy access to funding to grow their business, expand business, and employ more teamy youth that are unemployed. Some of these things resonate with the issues that we're looking at as business. So if you ask me, key issues is what I've just highlighted for you to consider. Yeah.
One of the challenges with taxing is that people generally do not want to pay tax. These line items that you've highlighted, are they going to incentivize Ghanaians to now start paying taxes? I mean, if you say that you're giving us a fresh start, does that actually encourage Ghanaians to start paying taxes going forward?
It is a good start, but what goes beyond that is education. Okay, we need to educate the business environment why we need to pay taxes. And one other thing is, after paying taxes, what do we use our taxes for? If I pay taxes and I see the benefit, I'll be encouraged to do. So the first start is to give us amnesty. The second start is to harmonize the environment to make compliance so high. Self-compliance is what we're talking about. Over the period, what has happened is this. Because government want to rake in more revenue, they always seek to increase taxes. And there's a model was professed by Arthur Leffer, which says that increasing taxes does not always mean you're going to get a lot of revenue. And increasing taxes makes it much more difficult for business to pay. But if you harmonize it, if you reduce it, it will encourage more people to get into the tax net. So we are so much convinced with such policies, if it's well implemented, you get a lot of businesses willingly and on their own volition complying with the tax policy. Let me cite another typical example. When you look at the administration and the structure of the current VAT system, when you get to a typical market like the FMCG, that is the fast movable consumer goods, like the rice, the daily foods that we eat. In my shop, maybe I am rated as 4% flat rate agent. The next shop is on standard rate, on 21% effective rate. We are selling the same rice or oil. When you, as a customer, comes to the market, you are looking at affordable product, but quality of that matter. So you obviously will come to me who is on 4% flat rate, because my price, or what you call it, my cost will be cheaper, my price will be cheaper. But the other shop cannot sell the price that I'm selling. So over the period, we'll be losing out. And because he might be having obligations to meet, either with the banks or paying of statutory levy, you'll be compelled not to even charge the standard rate. That is where a lot of avoidance and evasion of tax comes in.
Right.
But when there's harmony, the next shop, if it's on 4% flat rate like I enjoy, he can easily apply the 4% flat rate, and by so doing, he's paying the taxes.
Right. Mr. Kusiapia, hold for me. Let's go for our next sound bite and we continue the conversation. But I thought your loudest applause line will come for his promise to abolish betting tax. You didn't touch on that. Let's go for our next sound bite to continue the conversation afterward.
Doubt to believe it is crystal clear from the data-backed account we have given that our overall performance and track record are superior to that of my opponent and his party in virtually every sector. Virtually every sector we are superior. But I believe, as a former president and a proud student of history, he knows that. And that is one part of the reason why he is avoiding a debate. The other part, of course, is about the courage and the confidence to put what he intends to do differently this time around with the power he seeks, side by side to the vision I have for Ghana and the clear roadmap to getting the work done. That is the choice we are presenting to you, the Ghanaian voter, on December 7th.
Let me go to Dr. John Osai Kwapo. Doc, so the Vice President is saying that his performance, and by that I mean the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration, has performed superior than any other government in the history of the Fourth Republic. And for that reason, he thinks the former President John Dramani Mahama is running away from a debate, because if both of them are put on the same stage and the questions are posed to them, he will come out victorious. What do you make of that?
Let me work my way backwards. On the question of the debate, though, I am not of the opinion that the former president will be unable to debate the vice president on the economy or any other governance issues, in the lead up to the 2024 election. I mean, I know the NDC has made its position very clear that they will not take part in any presidential debates this year, and they've offered their reasons for that. Excuse me. But I am not of the opinion that the former president will be unable to debate Dr. Bawumia, on the economy, on governance issues as part of the 2024 election. Now, I know the MPP government regularly reiterates the point that their performance has been superior to that of the John Mahama administration that they inherited.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, if you look at some of the indicators, though, that some of the indicators do not bear out fully that assertion. So, for example, if you take a look at inflation, if you look at where inflation stood as of 2016, and then if you look at the rates of inflation that we have seen over the course of this administration. In fact, their own manifesto does note that inflation went as high as 54%, has come down at the end of 2023, and we are beginning to see a lowering trend so far in 2024, which still stands at 20 point something, almost 21%, which is still higher than what they inherited. Yes, they prefer and they give reasons as to the economic challenges that we have faced. The argument is always the twin effects of the global health crisis, COVID-19, as well as the Russian-Ukraine war, right? But I, in my honest opinion, and with all due respect, if you look at a number of the indicators, I think it is not on all of the indicators that you can make that assertion that the economic performance and the achievements have been that superior, because not all of the economic indicators will bear out that argument. Yes, between 2017 and 2019, some of the indicators were starting to trend well and starting to look good. But I think if you look overall, some of the indicators will not bear out the fact that it's been, totally superior to the Mahama administration. Right. And therefore is the basis why John Mahama doesn't want to debate him.
Okay, so given the, current, not a current, but the economic indicators that you yourself have just, elaborated on, and the challenges really that we are facing in terms of high inflation, rising public debts, fuel, hike in food prices and all that, do you think that his promises in this, manifesto to lead us to solve actually meets Ghanaians at the point of our needs in terms of the economy?
Yes. I mean, if you look at some of the ideas being proposed around job creation, because job creation continues to be, if you look at the polls that have been done this year, if you look at Afrobarometer over 9 rounds, unemployment continues to be the main issue. So yes, if you look at some of the ideas that are being proposed in terms of how you deal with the unemployment situation, how you get the economy really going, again, if it can all be implemented and without any hiccups, I do see the prospects of how it can help address the many pinch points that Ghanaians are facing.
Okay, please hold for me. We have Professor Lord Mensah with us, and he's an economist and lecturer at University of Ghana Business School. Professor Lord Mensah, thank you for joining the conversation. First, what did you make of Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia's manifesto to lead is to solve? And then we'll go and listen to some of the things he said specifically, and then we have a conversation on that.
Yeah, generally, there are things put together, for Ghanaians to consume, to decide whether they would like to, vote for the MPP party or they would like to change, If you look at the numbers that were churned out, looking at the GDP, how it has grown and all those, clearly that is what we see. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, is the growth inclusive, or does the growth trickle down to the ordinary person's, pocket? That is what we don't see. And for me, if you put out these numbers, of course, depending on your lens, if you're looking at the economy, from that macro scale level, then obviously you would say that, yes, we are growing. But then at the individual level, it's not that as we see.
Let's listen to Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia specifically on what he plans to do with the economy to turn it around, and then we'll be back.
Fact that between 2020 and 2022, we experienced severe challenges triggered by the pandemic, which brought the world and our country to a thundering halt. The world experienced the greatest economic depression since the 1930s. with most countries recording negative GDP growth. Supply chain disruptions and the rising price of oil resulted in major increases in the prices of fuel, freight, and food across the globe. Indeed, Ghanaians were hit very hard by rising food prices, increased exchange rate depreciation, rising fuel prices, and rising transport fares. Our debt became unsustainable and had to be restructured. Bondholders saw a sharp decline in their net worth following the painful yet unavoidable debt restructuring program. We faced very challenging times, but with calm leadership and the support and understanding of the good people of Ghana, we have weathered the storm, and the economy is firmly on the path of recovery, with increasing GDP growth and declining inflation. It is gratifying to note that our policy interventions have started yielding the desired macroeconomic results. Many economists and analysts have rightly stated that Ghana has turned the corner, but we know that for many families, the cost of living is still very high. The hardship is real, and we commit to doing more to relieve the difficulties Ghanaians are facing.
Well, so there you have it. And I just want to put this in context. In 2020, the NPP promised an economic recovery and growth, that is post-COVID economic recovery, and they pledged to implement policies, support businesses, create jobs, stabilize the economy. I mean, after the setbacks that the COVID-19 pandemic caused. And they said they were making initial successes, and then Russia-Ukraine war also came in. At this point in time, Professor Lord Mensah, is Russia-Ukraine war still a justifiable excuse for which reason they're asking us for 4 more years to do what they requested 4 more to do more 4 years ago?
Yeah, well, can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes, Prof, go on. We can hear you.
Right. So if you ask me, I would say that, yes, indeed.
I think we are struggling to connect with Professor Lord Mensah. Let me throw that question to Dr. John Osai-Kwapon. Doc, so 4 years ago, they said we should give them 4 more to do more in the economy, and they promised to lead us to the journey of recovering the economy after the setbacks that the COVID-19 and Russia and Ukraine war, all that. Is that still a justifiable excuse for which reason they want more years to do the same thing that they promised us to do, and they've had 8 years to do already?
Several months ago, I wrote that the argument of COVID-19, right? I mean, everybody acknowledges that the COVID-19 global crisis did hit a lot of economies around the world.
Doc, I'm sorry I have to do this. I think Professor Lord Mensah is back on, and I do want to get a sense of his thoughts. Prof?
No problem.
Yeah.
Yes. So what I was saying is that I think my line is breaking here. I don't know whether it's coming from your end or my end. But what I was saying is that Russian-Ukraine war had impact, but then at the end of the day, by this time, the impact should have dissipated by now. I mean, let's face the fact. Russian-Ukraine war may have impact on our economy, maybe through, oil prices on the global market. But we didn't see oil price, surging as expected. On the global market during the difficulties to, just the Russian-Ukraine war and the COVID. There is an internal, issues or, mismanagement that we may have to deal with. And as a result of that,
It is rather unfortunate
we had
that,
this kind of escalation. Let's appreciate that when you're looking at the economy from the macro front, you may say that we are doing well, as I was, saying earlier. But then at the individual level or the micro level, it is quite difficult. And we know very well that Africa Ghanaian has reduced completely as a result of inflation. Inflation went to 54 point something, and the momentum that it gathered to go to that level of 54.1, it still lingers on the market. We can ask our wives. They will tell you that prices are still going up. We can say that yes, indeed, we are doing quite a different ball game altogether. What I did not see in throwing out all these macro gains, is the liabilities that we've incurred as a result of, this macro gain. If I talk about liability, I'm looking at our debt, our debt to 53 billion and over, whilst our GDP has also grown from, 1 billion to 76 billion. And that should tell you that, yes, of course, while we're growing our economy, we are growing the liability that goes with the economy. And we need to ask ourselves, whether we have the capacity to service our debt or not after going through this debt negotiations and all that. The entire manifesto, talks about, our debt service, all right. But then what we forget to look at is that the manifesto forgot to look at is, the debt service and its impact on the economy going forward. We can't take that for granted because, we had a liability. And again, all the taxes that were promised, that we're going to provide, the manifesto is going to provide tax incentives here and there to ensure that, businesses can, expand with the tax, freedom that they will enjoy. And employ more people, that is true employment creation and all those. I can tell you that we cannot achieve that in the first 2 years of, the next government administration because of the IMF program. We've urged all the taxes against, the IMF, program, because in the program we indicated that we're going to increase, our tax to GDP from 14% to 18%. So from now to 2026, anything that, will have to do with, tax, incentives and then providing, tax holidays and all those, we may not be able to achieve that, but then that could go beyond the 2026.
Okay, so now he wants to cut expenditure by 30 billion Ghana cedis. And I don't know if that is enough cutting to save Ghana's ailing economy, but he also says he wants to grow the economy at 6% annual. How will this help us achieve good economic growth? Is it feasible, first of all? I think we're just struggling to connect with Prof. I don't know if it's where he is, but... Okay, Professor Lord Mensah, I was asking that the government wants to cut expenditure by 30 billion Ghana cedis. And they also want to grow the economy based on the things Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was saying at 6% annual. How will this help us achieve the economic growth we want? And is this cutting, in this 30 billion Ghana cedis cutting enough to save Ghana's ailing economy?
I think 30 billion, if you look at it in dollar terms, expenditure cut from that direction. Because if you have an economy that is worth around 700 and something billion Ghana cedis, and you're just cutting, 30 billion into another, line of, investment within the economy, I think it is too small. I'm happy. He mentioned, cutting down the number of ministers to 50.
Professor Lord Mensah, unfortunately, there's a lot of interference, so we'd have to try and connect with you subsequently, maybe tomorrow going forward. But we would have to pick up this conversation again. Let me come to Dr. Osai Kwapong just to wrap. Doc, so just give me a wrap of your thoughts on everything so far, the promises of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and our expectations. The question really now is how voters are absorbing this vision for the next 4 years as put out by Dr. Bawumia. Give me a wrap of your thoughts.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, it boils down to, for me, one, the extent to which voters would still buy the COVID-19 Russia-Ukraine war argument as the basis for the economic challenges that we have faced. On COVID-19, for example, I do acknowledge that globally countries' economies suffered. But what I have also said in the past is that there is a limit to that argument because we were also not left to our own devices, in the sense that support did come in during that period. And so there needs to be some reconciliation with, whilst we acknowledge the crisis, we did get support, and why didn't that support make the difference that it was designed to make? So for me, one, it boils down to would voters buy the argument wholeheartedly that our challenges had nothing to do with the government, but everything to do with external factors. The other thing that for me, when all is said and done, it boils down to is voters have to be convinced, they have to trust that whatever the candidate is promising, that the candidate will be able to deliver. Now, you can't always predict the future, right? In election, it's a chance that you take. And part of taking that chance is informed by trust. And so, again, I mean, those who vote MPP would vote MPP. This manifesto is not what would change their mind about whether they want their party in power or not. But there's still a group of voters who are also always in the middle and need a choice to make. Those are the ones that I believe sometimes some of these ideas, these policies, are aimed and targeted at. And at the end of the day, I think the Ghanaian voter has to weigh very heavily the question of trust as well as ability. You have to be able to say, okay, I think I can believe this person, or I believe I can trust this person to be able to do all of these things that they are saying. If we elect them, they'll be able to do.
Thank you so much. And just something you said, I want to quickly follow up on that. There's a group of voters who need to be convinced. This year, we have nearly 1 million new voters. And also on the back of the NDC's Youth Manifesto. When I listened to Dr. Bawumia yesterday, in terms of his plan or the vision for the youth, did you see a clear direction on what he intends to do for the youth?
So two things that I saw. One has to do with not making national service compulsory, especially if you have a job right after education,
right.
Your university education. So I saw that. I also saw the idea of the training, in
yes.
skills for the digital economy. But I think one of the things that the NDC did in terms of one leg up was to actually have a manifesto solely directed at the youth. And I think in going forward and campaigning, they would have to find a way to make sure that they expand what they are promising the youth. Because I think the NDC found a very creative way to say, here's something separate, outside of the main manifesto targeted specifically.
Thank you so much. Let me wrap now with Mr. Enoch, Charles Kusiapia. Charles, your final words.
I want to integrate the Vice President's manifesto in terms of business growth into what we call the supply economy, where you want lower taxes, create more flexibility within the business environment, so that business will get to more production. When there's more production, it obviously will affect prices. Price will come down because of the supply aggregate against demand aggregate. In that way, you can create more jobs because factories will need more hands. And through that, you see economic multiplier effect, where money circulation will ensure that every household will have a disposable income to take care of life.
Right.
And in doing that, business will grow. And as businesses are growing, government will get a reliable and sustainable taxes. So we are most grateful to him, and we are hoping that if we give it the mandate, he can stick to his promise and deliver as he has told us all. Yeah.
Charles Kusi-Appiah-Kubi is Head of Business and Economic Bureau and Executive Secretary of Ashanti Business Owners Association, also with GUTAG. We also have Professor Lord Mensah, an economist and lecturer at University of Ghana Business School, as well as Dr. John Osai Kwapong, who is a CDD fellow. Those are my panel members for this conversation. Thank you so much. But